are hot, so just an FYI. We do have participants online, so we'll welcome all of our friends, colleagues, neighbors online, give them a wave. And this is made possible so that we have people who can attend in person and virtual. We're excited about that opportunity. Huge thanks and kudos to Craig. Let's shout out Craig, yay! Craig's the one. So as always, Craig, thank you for your expertise and everything that you bring to our spaces. Also, I'm supposed to tell you that this event, I'll just read verbatim. Are you guys cool with that? Bluff Town Council members may be present in the audience or online. However, this is not a town meeting. Any questions or comments made by a person who is a council member is speaking as a resident and a voter and not for the council. Thumbs up if you understand that one. Thanks, good people. Awesome. I'd love to just ditch the rules about whatever folks expect, right, for time. The only one I'm not ditching is kindness and decorum, right? So if you can't be those people, there's the door. Just kidding. You're always welcome to participate. Here's what I'd like to ask, though. When I show up in certain spaces, we are doing so with community norms, and that is asking folks to take up space when they want to and need to, and then stand back when they don't need to take up space. If you guys want to be timed, I'm happy to time you. If you want 1 minute or 63 seconds, like I can do that. But if you think you can answer the questions to your ability and not be the people who like overstep and then not understep, make that balance. Is that cool with you? Community members, how do you feel about that? If we let people just sort of answer the questions? Excellent, thanks for that feedback. If that's not working, we'll check in and fix that in a minute. Next one, there's been a request for a little bit of dialogue. So if someone asks a question and a response is given, if there's a follow-up by the community member or another community member, and then another response. How does that feel to folks? Cool? Great, thanks. Bill, you had a question?
Are there going to be follow-up questions allowed?
I think so. Yeah, just act with kindness and decorum. Excellent, excellent. And then for our folks online, if you do have questions, please feel free to join us in the chat, and we'll monitor that. Somehow. Did Aaron take off? Yeah. Cool, we'll work on that. Questions, thoughts, feelings, reactions? Awesome, I hope you showed up with some questions to ask the people here. I'll just give you my personal opinion. Thank you for putting your name in the hat. Thank you for being a part of this. To me, that's already the win, is that you've agreed to serve our town and serve our town council. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. However it plays out, however it stacks up, great, we'll make it work, but thank you for doing so. Great. Do we need introductions from our candidates? Yeah. Okay, go ahead, and who would like to start?
Gary's in charge.
All right, we'll do a quick intro just down the line, and then we'll start with community questions. Thanks.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you all for being here. My name is Gary Lichtenstein. I've been a Bluff resident from 1998 up until 2016, and my wife is Kay. Wait. I took a job down at Arizona State University for 5 years, and we returned in July 22 as homeowners. In that time I've been here, I, like most people, intended to stay for just a few days or a couple weeks. It was 18 years, the first round. But I found a home here and have been involved in community activities, the fire department, the Southwest Heritage Foundation, Bluff City Historic Preservation Association, various other activities through the fire department. I've been involved in the school emergency plans there. And I do the administrative work, which is really exciting because thanks to Ann and the town council, the fire department now has a budget, which is the first time since the mid-70s when the department formed. So that means that we actually can have some agency and self-determination, and that helps the town and helps the department. So I'm running because I have deep connections here. across a range of residents, business owners, the county, people who volunteer on different committees. And I'd like to see us all working together to take advantage of this opportunity we have now that we're incorporated to also express our agency in healthy communal ways.
Now we get to see if we're going to play the feedback game all night. Jennifer Davila. I lived here for a long time. We moved here when I was 11, so it's been a long time at this point, 30-some odd years. So I am running because I love Bluff. I have got a lifetime commitment here. I have a lifetime commitment to come here as well. Very, very invested in our community, and I want to help shape the way it continues to grow and keep it a great place to live. My platform is I'd like to see some more services generated in town for all of us to take advantage of. I want to work on continuing our sense of community, help heal rifts that have been formed for centuries longer than I've been in existence probably, but I think we can come together and really keep Bluff as a great place to live and remember that we're all a big part of our small community. And when the going gets tough, I know we all show that regularly, but I would like to see that happen on a little more frequent basis, I guess is the way to say that. So I guess that's better. I'm a business owner. I'm the president of Business Owners of Bluff. I'm a mom, a wife, committed gardener this right now. I'm missing our farm stand tonight, so but yeah, I'll pass it on to Britt.
Thank you. Can you hear me? All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Britt Hornsby. I'm 38 years old. I live at 515 East Visalia Drive, so it's a little terrace just east of Cemetery Hill. If you look north from the post office, you'll see my house, the little red roof of our house. My wife, Sarah, and I built that house 6 years ago together, and we lived there with our two wonderful children, Quinn, who is 3, and Virgil, who just turned 1 at the beginning of October. We moved to San Juan County 16 years ago. We came out as AmeriCorps Vista volunteers and fell in love with the area and ended up turning that into a 16-year commitment. We never really thought about or really truly entertained leaving the area. Because of that, we've moved around quite a bit in San Juan County. We lived 4 years in Monticello and then a year in Spanish Valley and then 3 years in the Needles District of Canyonlands before moving here 8 years ago full time. During that 16 years, I've worked in and out of Bluff that entire time. When I came as an AmeriCorps Vista, I ended up getting a job as a program manager at Canyon Country Youth Corps. We would hire 80 to 120 almost exclusively Navajo youth to do conservation work, and that was ages 18 to 24 primarily. So did conservation work for 4 years out of Monticello, burned myself slap out. I was 24, managing a huge group of people, doing a lot more than I had really intended to be doing when I kind of carefree came out here. So I left that position and got a job as a San Juan River Ranger down at Sand Island. That's how a lot of you probably got first introduced to me. I did that job for 7 years and considered that my late 20s retirement plan. It was awesome. I loved that job and kind of thought I would be doing it for a lot longer. But as the public lands tide kind of turned against public lands nationally as well as locally, I hopped off the boat and got a job with what was then Friends of Cedar Mesa, now Bears Ears Partnership, as the field director. So I've been doing that for 6 years. In that position, I do a lot of collaborative conservation work, and I really enjoy that work. The reason I'm running is honestly, I have seen a lot of my friends stepping up and doing positions like planning and zoning, fire department, things of that nature that wasn't really fitting into my life at the time this came up. It fits into my life perfectly right now, this go around. I've got kids, I've got a house, I'm not going anywhere for the first time. I'm finally not living out of a van and all that kind of stuff. So I'm feeling pretty rooted right now and feeling like it's a good time for me to make a shot at it. I think I've got experience that can be helpful to town. I've got a lot of experience with grant writing, and not just like grant writing, but grant implementation, because everybody focuses on the writing, but a lot of people get grants and then don't do anything with it. So I've got a lot of experience at actually getting across the finish line on what you said you were going to do and then reporting on it and all that stuff. Yeah, and a lot of collaborative work experience, so I think I can help maybe build some bridges. Being new, I don't have a lot of baggage with the past. I don't really know a lot of times what people are talking about with some of the whole drama, which I've learned the hard way. Yeah, looking forward to hearing your questions. Thank you very much.
Well, I think most of you know me, Wes Shook. Have been coming down into San Juan County for the last, since 72, 95 was still a dirt road when I first started backpacking down here. 2008, moved up to Natural Bridges as a volunteer. Spent 2 years doing that. Of course, I went to college here in Utah at BYU and at the University of Utah. Spent 2 years as a Vista volunteer, University Year for Action up at the U, working in Utah County, and additionally working on community economic development for the University of Utah. We moved back here, Carol and I did, in 2010, and my college sweetheart, we tied up again, and so we've got our house down here, not going anyplace unless the ashes are scattered over Comb Ridge. So my whole thing is, at this point, the town made a decision a couple of years ago to incorporate. We're at that crossroads again where the town needs to make a decision. Are we going to go in one direction or are we going to go in another direction? And I really believe, if you take a look at what's going on up in Spanish Valley now, would you believe that San Juan County does not have an enforcement officer for all the Airbnbs up in Spanish Valley, or if folks are violating their laws? And so that's where I'm coming from. We're going to disconnect 9,500 acres, Sitla. You know, my whole thing is, don't Moab Bluff. I mean, I really appreciate the business operations and what they're doing, but it needs to be growth in regards to what we really want. And, you know, right now, I didn't take a look at it, but we've got the 2020 census said 250 residents, 150 houses. We know we got more apartment or motel rooms than we have residences. So we need to make a driving connection between those two. We can't afford a lot of things that a small town or the businesses might be willing to pay for. And so that's where I'm at. I have been on the BSA as a board member, and I served as chairperson for the BSA years ago and retired off of that because no good deed goes unpunished in this community. So that's it for me. I'm here to serve and to help make sure that Bluff grows the way it should. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Those of you who are joining us online, I just want to check in that you're there. If you can throw an emoji up, that'd be really great. And those of you online, I just want to also invite you to the chat to type in any questions that you do have. All right. Thank you. Thanks for being a part of this. Excellent. Next, I'm going to open up this space, this microphone, to community members here. Anyone who has a question they'd like to pose to our candidates, please feel welcome to join me here, and I'm going to step to the side. So welcome yourselves to this microphone. Who's ready? Yes, Jen. Awesome. That's a great piece of feedback. Thanks for offering that. And just out of the spirit of getting to know everyone, making sure we do, please say your name when you ask your question. And if you want to give your address, that's great too, but you don't have to. There's no requirement. So who's ready to ask the first question? Excellent. Thanks, neighbor. So just a kind reminder, we'll say our name, and then we'll say if the question is for everyone or for a specific candidate. Thanks. And if you want to do a series, do a series.
Hi, my name is Ann Brown, and I'm a new member of the community. But I have basically, Rusty and I have pretty much only lived in small places for most of our adult life. So these questions come from not just Bluff, but other small towns around the country that we've lived in. Excuse me, and feel a need. So I'm going to try to call this down to 2. These are all for all 4 of you. From what I've seen of this town council, it's pretty much a full-time job. I mean, I look at the hours that many of the members put in, and which is amazing, and they should always be applauded. But I'd like to know how each of you plan to balance your jobs, your out-of-town plans, et cetera, how you plan on accomplishing the needs of the town and balance that with your work and your other situations.
Am I good? All right, there we go. So for me, the first thing for the balance is my wonderful wife, Sarah, who is incredible and has always, throughout our entire lives, been incredibly flexible with any wild thing I want to do, town council, random Grand Canyon river trip, anything. She's always there and supportive. Right now, I actually have a surprisingly flexible job because of the way everything has turned into work from home has actually been super, super helpful for me, like raising kids and things like that. I tend to be a very get buckled down, work a few hours and get stuff knocked out kind of thing, and then be available for anything else that comes up. So I can be fairly flexible throughout the day. I've also already discussed this with my work because it's definitely a concern of mine. It was my primary concern with taking it was committing to something I wouldn't have the space for. But I spoke with my work, and they're willing to be flexible with me and help me figure out how to accommodate doing both. So I'm feeling pretty good about it, and I'm home all the time now with kids. I am incredibly available, surprisingly available. So I feel like I can balance it pretty well. I hope that answers that question.
And am I on? There, okay. So I am incredibly busy, as any business owner and mom will attest to. I am fortunate in that my kiddos at this point in time in my life, one has flown the coop and the other one is incredibly independent, whether I would like him to be or not. He just is. So I've found myself having a little bit of extra time thrown in my life. I'm also the boss at work, so I'm able to schedule around the scheduling things that I need to do over there. Of course, it's a big time commitment for any and all of us, and I hope that now that our current town council has gotten a lot of kinks worked out and lined out, I've noticed for our last several meetings, they've kind of taken the water board mentality, and we've been done in under an hour. So applaud to the town council for shortening their meetings a bit, and I think that's great. I think it's important. I love the online aspect for it because it allows you to participate even when you can't physically be present, although I personally would prefer to be present because I think you can get a lot accomplished when you're working with your core group face-to-face rather than trying to hassle with, am I muted, or where is my, where is that button? I think we're getting better at it, but I think still there's some snafus with the online stuff. But I'm glad it's available as an option. So in making the decision to run again, I have made, the personal sacrifice that it takes to commit to doing this job correctly.
Well, I pretty much understand what this requires as BSA chair and as a member. I did a whole bunch of time, was on free time. The town council has been doing a lot of work that is just impossible. They're working 80 hours a week. It's one of the reasons I decided to run. However, I do take 3 months off in the winter and go someplace where it's warm. After my wife broke her hip here in this building, skiing is kind of out of my bounds, so I go monthly or for 3 months down to Mexico and spend it down there. But it's all online, and so I can attend that. I think they would say the town would, if they keep a record, they know that I was online. Most of the time I was down in Mexico. Don't have a problem. It's Florida time, so it's only 2 hours later than what it is here, so, or earlier. I can't even remember when the time goes. But anyway, I understand the time commitment, and I appreciate what the town council has done so far. I just want to carry on that tradition. Thank you.
So I'm also a business owner. I do consulting work in STEM education, mostly around the country. And when I was down at Arizona State, I was limited in the number of hours I could put in outside of my full-time job there. And so I implemented a model where I have senior consultants who do the face-to-face with my clients. And I check in with them periodically. So that enabled me to keep the business going, keep my relationships and commitments, and also make sure our work was top quality and done on time. And I would implement the same model. In fact, I've continued it because it makes my life so much easier. So I've got the consultants in place, and I can modulate my work as needed. That's my paid work. I'm not retired. I'm not as close as I'd like to be. I do a lot of volunteer work in Kenya, and I got 2 projects transitioning out by December, so that frees up some time for me. I always seem to find the time I need to be where I need to be when I need to be there. Fortunately, there are 24 hours in a day, and I can use them all if I need to. I don't underestimate the effort that this job takes and the time. Having said that, I agree with Wes. If we have a volunteer council that requires people working 30 to 60 hours a week to make it run, it's not working. And I think one of our, that's not to denigrate the efforts that everyone, particularly Ann, has made over the years, but it is to say that if we can't make this manageable and containable, it's not sustainable. And one of our jobs as council people would be to make this job work, given the constraints that we have in terms of time and budget.
Awesome. Good answers. And my second question, and I have a list, but I'm only going to ask one more. And this is for all of you. Britt mentions grants, and in my history of small towns, grant writing is the #1. I would not hire somebody as a previous business owner who could not write a grant. And as Britt pointed out, make sure it works. So I'd like to know what each of you have had responsibility for in grant writing, what kinds of projects they were, how much money was raised, and what the results were.
All my contracts are mostly with the National Science Foundation and federal agencies, and I usually work under principal investigators, but in their applications, their grant applications, I have sections that I'm responsible for, so that's just routine for me. On the fire department, I've written over $1 million of grants, 972,000 have been funded. My community work, I'm just getting ready to submit a grant to a nonprofit now. The caveat that Ann mentioned is a really big one. I discovered on the fire department that you have cradle-to-grave grant giving. So you write the grant, and you get the money, and you then have to purchase the stuff, and then you have to put it together. And I remember on the first grant is when I learned this, is when we winterized that jail space over there for our trucks. And I wrote the grant for that. We got the grant. Next thing I know, I'm digging the trench from the tank to the building and wiring up the pipes and all that stuff. So it's not a small matter to figure out about the implementation. In the strategic plan, we do have a goal of an outcome would be to hire a grant writer, and I think that's really sensible to do because these grants, you know, the language for them can be used in multiple grants. So if you have one person doing most of these, it can be much more efficient and effective. At the same time, we do need an implementation plan when we write a grant to figure out, okay, if we get this, how's it going to be doing, so we don't discourage people from spending the time it takes to make the thing work.
So I am certainly probably the least possibly experienced with the grant writing process, although I have participated in the writing and completion of several grants here in town. I've participated in a lot of the grant writing that we do through the Business Owners of Bluff. I've helped on the arts grant at the elementary school. I've written grants for my own personal business. Dollar sign wise, you know, I mean, they're in the thousands, nothing in the millions. But I think one of the most important thing for us to all remember is that it's one thing to get the grant, it's another to manage it and make sure that we spend that money the way it's intended. I know that in the past, Bluff has given up a lot of grants that we have been awarded. To me, that's, you know, maybe not the best management of things. I think that, you know, if you do that too many times, the powers that be are not going to give you the money that you're applying for. They're, you know, I don't want to waste somebody's time, so I think that it's really important to make sure you have the follow-through. I think that's part of the grant research to begin with, is to know what your steps are and know what your follow-through is going to be on that. I have, you know, I've participated, I seem to get to participate in the wrap-up a lot of the Business Owners of Bluff grants, you know, providing the numbers and the metrics and the things like that to prove that we actually accomplished what we had set out to do. And I think that's an important part that maybe a lot of people don't realize is still there looming over their heads when they're writing the grant. I'm all for going to get grants, especially in a community like ours where we have a limited tax base and resource. I know that grants are a great way to get a lot of things accomplished, and I'm hopeful that we will continue to receive them.
So it's my experience that grant writing ends up being like a pretty collaborative, at least the way I've done it, like a pretty collaborative process in my experience. Because normally they're so huge and so tedious with everything from, you know, your project timelines and things like that down to your minuscule budget notes, down to just the narratives that have to be written. They can be a lot for a person if they're not their full-time job, even if it is their full-time job. So I've gotten used to doing these kind of almost team-based by like blocking off certain chunks of the grant that you're going to work on and I'm going to work on. That's why you might get Business Owners of Bluff might get a request from me for a letter of support or something, because that's what I'm handling on this big project. And we almost treat the grants like a project in and of themselves, even if you get them or not, like they're a whole lift. The other thing that's really important is to have your projects first. Like, don't go hunting the grant and then make something fit, you know, retrofit into it because it's money you wanted. Like, look for a project, let that lead the way, whatever your projects or goals are first, then find grants that fit that, and don't twist and turn your project around and make it something it's not meant to be because you let the grant lead the way. And then, you know, I think one thing we need to do too is take advantage of some of the nonprofits in town, like I'm totally blanking on the name since they're new. I call it Dan's Dan's nonprofit. But what is it, Drew? Help me. Bluff Community Foundation. Thank you. You know, leaning on them to help us. You know, they can apply for grants. We can assist them in applying for grants. They might be able to help with some of those capacity issues. They do have 5 motivated people, I think, that are on the board for that and working on that. So that could be a way we share some of the load. Yeah, and then for my past experience on it, I mean, just like this year, just today was wrapping up a 2-year grant with Utah Outdoor Recreation Grant state funding for Forest Service work at 3 cultural sites across Bears Ears, putting in trailheads, parking areas, that kind of thing. Those were about $150,000. A lot of the site conservation work I do very quickly gets up in the $200,000 range. It's just a lot of scientists at work and a lot of reporting. Yeah. And then recently, we've worked with World Monuments Fund and the state of Utah to get funding for the Sand Island Trail, to put in an ADA accessible trail from the Sand Island Loop 8 campground up to the Mammoth Panel and connect into the Bluff River Trail. And that's about $350,000 price tag on that one, between 2 grants. So, there you go.
Well, it has been years since I've had to write a grant, so I can be honest with that up front. When I worked for Vista University Year for Action up in Salt Lake, I instituted and got a grant for the first legal services in Utah County. Additionally, I worked on several projects up there that we got money from the state to do the community economic development portion of research and surveys. And for those of you who are young enough, you can't remember the big old data outputs of stacks and stacks of paper. And of course, then while I was working for the Forest Service, which a long time ago in a galaxy far away, I moved into Vandenberg Air Force Base, started a training program there at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and convinced the colonel to allow me to move into a school, and then convinced them that the hotshots ought to build me a new building, and so we spent money, and I got money from the regional office to furnish that building. So it has been a while. I'm not going to even cross that path, but I know how important it is for a small town to have that information and try to use those funds that are available out there. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to do a time check. We're at 6:32 according to the device I'm using, and I want to check in with folks about how the format is working, this sort of free-for-all, good or bad. Great. I've got 2 questions in the chat. I know several folks are prepared for those, so I just want to note that for time and space for everyone here. I'll ask one in the chat while the next person comes up, and they'll be on deck to ask their question. This chat question says, who's coming up? That's next person, go ahead and come up. Great, thank you. And while Spencer is preparing, just in a quick response, or whatever, what is your idea about creating more affordable housing?
So, as somebody who, like many people, have struggled to find housing in Bluff, been frustrated to the point of almost leaving and then finally finding something, it is very difficult to find not just affordable housing, like, period. One of the things I've been thinking about a lot with this is that there's certain amounts that town can do and that we can turn to town to do in a lot of this, but I think a lot of it is also on property owners to make the decisions to let go of properties or subdivide things like that might help alleviate as well, and it not just be a full, what's the town's strategic plan for something, because that could take forever to implement. It seems like the people I know that have had luck have had property owners coming off of property, dropping down, helping people, things like that. If it continues to be kind of the just dog-eat-dog typical buy low, sell high thing, then we'll kind of continue to get, we're getting the kind of people who can afford to move here, who have the time and don't have to look for a job, things like that. And then so, I think leaning on this doesn't solve affordable housing, but it does solve part of that problem, which is the jobs here in town. I do think, given the fiber here in town has made it to where a lot of people can do remote work and take competitive jobs elsewhere. You're not getting San Juan County wages. You can pull wages from elsewhere, which might make it where you can stay. I've thought about maybe some density issues could happen, but we've got septic systems that could prevent that. So I think it's going to have to be a mix of just the town helping as well as property owners themselves making personal decisions that'll help with some of this immediately. But
this is going to be an issue for us for the coming years, is trying to get people to move in here and provide housing for them. You know, I'd like to point out that this piece of property that we're sitting on is 3 acres. We could certainly put tiny homes on here and use this land. We have bought into the Cultural Community Center. That's another piece of property that we can do. We can talk to other folks in town that have large sections of land or blocks of land of 3 acres and see if we can't sell it and use Section 8 housing or however you want to do it. But one of the keys is that we need to make sure that the wages for the folks that are working in town are commensurate with being able to afford it. You know, that's really the key, and we have no ability to raise the minimum wage here in the town. The state controls that. And so until we do that, nothing is going to change. And then additionally, to do the housing, we need workers that can do the building. So we need to provide housing for folks coming down here, carpenters, masoneries, whoever. And right now, a majority of that's on the reservation. The reservation is the majority of the workers. So we need to take a look at that. Solutions are not going to be easy with land going for $100,000 for an acre. It's not going to happen.
I believe the question was, what's our plan for affordable housing? Yeah. So to me, I think that plan is laid out really nicely in the strategic plan. It's a process, and as Wes says, it's an intermediate term to long-term process, but it's one that we can and should start right away. The sticky wicket, as Wes suggested, is that it involves everything. It involves planning and zoning, density questions, which lead to waste management. It has to do with economic development. It's a big sticky wicket, and I think you know, there's going to be individuals who are willing to offer land for low-income housing, but ultimately it has to be a community process that addresses so many other issues that we also have to deal with. So I'm not going to speculate on the specific pieces. I would like to start a task force that begins to look at the different pieces of this and move together in a thoughtful, effective way over time.
Well, in doing some personal research in this question, providing more long-term housing places as an employer, this is something that I consider greatly. My employees, although most of my employees do live across the river and have homes, but you know, management and upper-level employees type people like that certainly need a place to come and stay as well. But I think that we have to look closely at our current planning and zoning and make sure that we have density taken care of. I think we might have to review some things and allow for some more multifamily type structures to be allowed in town areas. I think that another important thing that the town council can specifically do is to help guide people who are looking to build multifamily dwellings or long-term housing into funding resources. That's a big sticky point for a lot of us, is that it's, you know, it's hard to get comps in Bluff as it is for getting financing. And I know that there are programs that are available to specifically help with that. So I would hope that the town could help guide people into finding those resources and making them reality. I think eventually we're also going to have to look at our wastewater system. That's a big component for affordable housing in Bluff. With the price of land being as high as it is, it's hard to find a piece of land that you can accommodate a big enough septic system to put a multifamily housing complex on. So that's, you know, that's eventually going to have to be addressed. And so I would hope that we can work through that, and I hope that it doesn't take us years and years and years to do it, because we need that housing now.
Thank you. Welcome, Spencer. If the next person's ready to assume this chair. No, you're. I got mine. Oh.
All right, hello. My name is Spencer. I've lived in Bluff for about 6 years. The question is to everyone there might be some additional answers from some of you. But as business owner, or as a young business owner in Bluff myself, I recently started a business, or I have a business. It's not up and running yet, but as business owners in Bluff, and this question goes to, I'm not sure which of you owns businesses or not, but I want everyone to answer the question. What are you going to do to ensure that businesses, yours and others, do not take precedent over the town/town needs? As a young business owner and someone who plans on staying in Bluff for a long time, the way the town is managed and the way we grow is one of the larger concerns for a lot of the newcomers in town. And you could get, I know it's not a very specific question, but it's one of the things that, I personally don't want Moab for Bluff.
I don't want Moab and Bluff either, although I would certainly like to be able to keep my business running at a good, sustainable financial level 12 months out of the year. So as for, I think that a lot of the business owners get bad raps in this town. We are all residents of this town as well. And, we want to keep it a place that we can continue to enjoy living, as just like everybody else in this town. So we do need our businesses in Bluff. I grew up in the town when we didn't have as many businesses, and town has changed quite a bit since then. Like I said last time, I don't ever want, not that I don't ever want to go back there, but it's a lot easier to live here now than it was then. So I think it's important to find that balance. I think it's important to keep town alive and moving. Without the businesses being successful in town, that's hard to do. So my goal is to find an even balance that keeps people who want to be here happy, living, supporting our residents, creating more jobs, but not, and I think certainly by, possibly keeping out franchises, things like that, we are able to maintain a moderate level of business growth so we can all be successful and continue to enjoy where we live.
Yeah, Spencer, you mentioned how can we make sure that businesses don't take over town needs? The town needs businesses, right? Businesses contribute 3 times more taxes than individuals. Not to say that their needs should overpower the needs of residents, but as Jen mentioned, residents are, business owners are residents, and they share some of the same concerns. So there is a balance between supporting businesses so they can do what they do. And everyone knows that the tourists who come through don't throw their money out the windows for us to pick up along the side of the highway, right? The businesses are the interface between our tourist trade industry and our town facilities and amenities. So I agree that there's a balance. But I don't see them as competing interests. And, I hear a lot about we don't want to become Moab. I'm not exactly sure always what that means, right? I think that the business owners here live here. I think that's an important thing. They share a lot of the concerns that all other residents do because they are residents themselves. And I do believe that working together, we can come up with equitable solutions when there seems to be tensions and conflicts. And that's the story of our self-governance as far as I'm concerned. So I'll reiterate, I don't think we should frame it as businesses versus town needs. They're consonant, but it's creating a balance that works for everybody.
Okay. I don't know how to answer this one other than in the fact that one of the business owners in town in one of his public comments said that, hey, the town wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us business owners. Business owners are tax collectors. It's the tourists that are paying the taxes, residential, all the rest of that. So I want them here. That's absolutely true. When I say I don't want Moab, I don't want all of that Sitla land up on the bench to turn into motels. Or, well, I guess I could deal with a Walmart, just so I wouldn't have to drive to Cortez to shop. But that's part of the problem. I don't know how many of you have looked at your tax statement, but my taxes doubled this year. So we're there. Do I have police protection down here? Very little. Do we have speeding enforcement? Very little. These gravel trucks coming out of Sondraggers up on the top of the hill are blowing through at more than 40 miles an hour. So I believe that we can work together to do that. But we need, if we want to grow and the businesses want to grow, we need to do it responsibly in that regards and not, well, the one thing I would like to say is build a 4-story building and not have a ladder fire truck in the entire county. So that if we had to deal with a fire, then we would be able to deal with it in a responsible manner. That's my point, and probably one of the reasons I'm running.
So for me, I'm going to circle back to the not Moab kind of sentiment. And for me, what that represents is outsized voice for businesses. When you go through Moab, I mean, the whole place is just, you see just business run wild, from the Airbnbs to the 20th t-shirt shop to, you know, just the sprawl, the never-ending sprawl that's gone out there. So that's what it means for me, is like outsized voice that lets the town lose a lot of what made it unique to begin with. That's like when I lived in Spanish Valley, it was horrible. Like, it was absolutely horrible. Your neighbors would back up and they would just unload for the week, and then the next guys would come in like timeshares. It was the most bizarre neighborhood I've ever lived in. I think it's just to make that outsized voice, that one side's not getting the more voice or doesn't expect to get more voice because of what they're involved with, whether it be resident or business. I mean, I felt like I saw it when planning and zoning was putting in the first round of zoning or whatever, and we had property owners, and some of the property owners acted like, it was like, well, you know, why didn't you come to me? Or like they acted like there was special treatment they were supposed to have for owning property. And that's not true. If you own a lot of property, then you have more responsibility, not less, you know, to be involved and to listen and things like that. So when I saw it with the landowners, that's where that was more, it's that sentiment, that outsized voice, that expectation that their voice, any person's voice is going to matter more than anybody else's because of what they're involved in on their personal time. You know, so thanks, Spencer.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Drew Cooper. Well, actually, I'm a new property owner. So I was on the lower east side. I'm now on the upper west.
Traitor.
So will you promise to accept the results of the election? I'm kidding. I assume that. It's a two-part question to everybody. First is yes or no. Do you perceive that the town of Bluff as a town has a capacity problem or shortage? If you agree, what is your first 90 days? What is your priority number one? You might have seen the organizational effectiveness, I think, section of the strategic plan. Maybe you can draw on something from that, but what is the immediate thing you'll focus on to try to address our capacity shortage if you accept that it exists? Thank you.
Residential capacity?
Staff capacity or capacity to execute functions of the town at the town government level.
Well, it comes back to code enforcement and the rest of that, as far as mine. I really believe if you take a look at what Monticello has done, Monticello got rid of their police department up there, turned it back to the sheriffs. And now they're paying the sheriffs for 2 or 3 hours, 3 days a week to come down and do speed enforcement in Monticello. I know one individual or actually two, that have got speeding tickets because it's a speed trap. All you have to do is, when you live on the west side of town, is take a look at what those gravel trucks are doing now, what everybody else does. Once they hit the curve and the bridge, they hit 60, 70 miles an hour and something like that. So that's it. That's one of the capacities that I see. You know, we've got a school that has, or a school district, I guess, that has, 10 acres of land out at the west end of town that they bought for $50,000 an acre. They've been trying to sell it ever since they bought it, since it is an area that might contain historical remnants of civilization. There are other folks in here that are selling 9 acres, 10 acres, or whatever. We need to look at how we could purchase that and go on a long-term contract. We now have a savings bank here in town, credit union. We need to be able to work with those folks and see what we can do about doing some kind of deal with them. You know, before we had the credit union 4 or 5 years ago, it was a trip to Blanding every time you wanted to deposit a check. You know, for those of you who are youngsters, hey, you could figure out how to take a picture of it and put it in. But us old folks can't do that. So that bank was a good deal.
I think that if we're discussing government, yes, I think we have capacity issues. I would like to see us be able to hire some sort of, well, first of all, I'm so glad we found Erin, because I think that has, you know, that filling that position has freed up a lot of time for the council members. They still have to put in tons of time doing things that I don't really think need to be part of their job. So I would like us to be able to find somebody who can assist the town board a little more. I also think that we need to look at someone to work on general town maintenance. I think that's a big capacity area that needs to be improved. There again, that all comes down to dollars and cents. So you know, I mean, I think little by little we can continue to explore those things, and I don't think that you're going to get any disagreement from any member on the town board that they're all way overworked and taxed very, very widely. So I'd like to see us continue to grow and create good jobs for people in the community and lighten the load of our town officials.
Well, we do have a capacity issue. I think New York City has a capacity issue. I think if you run a town, you're always up against your budget and your needs and the imperatives of the day. I don't think, because of the effectiveness of the town council up to now, that we have a crisis. And so I don't feel a need in the first 90 days to rush in and plug holes. I do feel a need to look carefully at the strategic plan and decide as a board which priorities we are going to attend to initially. We've got a couple, you know, the active transportation as one. I mentioned the affordable housing. I personally would be interested in starting a task force on that because it touches with so many other issues. I believe that I would make a distinction. I agree with Wes to an extent. I would make a distinction between code enforcement and law enforcement. There are constabulatory positions that are specifically designed to enforce codes. And I think enforcing codes is really critical, because without someone or some entity enforcing codes, your planning and zoning doesn't have teeth. And without planning and zoning having teeth, you don't have a master plan or a strategic plan. So I do think that that's something to look at. And but this is a council decision. I think we need to gather ourselves, and I would say within the first 90 days, go through that process and identify the priorities of the short and intermediate terms.
Yeah, and I think for me, it would be identifying what could be, outsource is the wrong word, but where can we get help from, like I said, like places like Bluff Community Foundation, Rural Utah Project, Bears Ears Partnership, Design-Build Bluff. Like, there's a lot of talented people in town. I know everybody, a lot of the same people are always volunteering, but trying to figure out how you can spread that weight around into some of those entities that aren't necessarily the 5 people on town council or the people in planning and zoning and things like that. You know, I think you could look for funding for consultants for people to help with some of that, especially with what towns had to do. I mean, they're not just doing it, they're creating a lot, and the creating is so much harder than the maintaining. So any of these creation points, maybe have more consultants, more people help, if at all possible. That can become its own quagmire. But that would be my thoughts for immediately addressing it. And yeah, big thanks to Aaron. To circle back to the question, Ann, you had about time commitment to this. Like, hearing everything that Aaron was doing for town council was a huge reason to be able to think we could even do it. So, you know, more Aarons. So.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I just want to check in with those here in person. How many more folks would like to ask a question, or more than one? So 1 here, 2 other folks in person. Great. So I have 2 in person. I have 2 questions also online. That makes 4. I said earlier 7:15 with chairs in the racks, but I'd like to rescind my comment and give folks the space and time to ask those questions. I'd also like to back up and thank Carolyn Jackson for the question about affordable housing. I don't believe that I listed the person's name when I said that. I'll let Ann speak next, and then I'll ask a question in the chat, and then it will be Bill.
So both in the forum tonight and in the first one, the words wastewater management came up. And so the question that I have is kind of a 2-part question for all of you. Secondary water, wastewater, where do you plan to get the funds to be able to implement what you're talking about, and what are you talking about specifically? So somebody want to grab it?
Well, you know, when you have 250 houses, how are we supposed to manage or build a sewer system in that regards? And the sewer system would be for whom? We can build more Moab-type structures so that we have that. You know, we know that we've already gone through this process, twice before, with the Bluff service area, taking a look at it. We can't afford it. We know we can't afford it. I don't think any of you who are homeowners, septic systems are working. We're doing fine. But I have no use for a waste management sewer system until we really become really a big town. We just cannot afford it, as far as I'm concerned. We still owe, if we were to start this process all over again, I think it's $190,000 that we'd have to pay back the state for the first study. That just doesn't make sense. We don't have $190,000 to throw away like that. Thank you.
We've been talking about waste management. Waste management is a solution to a problem. And I agree with Wes. I don't think we have that problem right now. The problem we have is coming together as a community. And we bring up this issue as sewer right now. I think that fractures us in ways that are just not worth it right now. When we have a problem that a sewer, or it's not just a sewer, in the strategic plan, there is a discussion about waste management. And that, when I said waste management, that's what I meant. I did not mean sewer. There's a lot of technologies that have evolved that make septics a lot more efficient and effective. And as we start looking at affordable housing, as we start looking at increased population, we're going to have to look at our waste management. Even if we stick with septics, they're going to have to be much more efficient and effective, because when they start to fail, which they do, we're going to have to be able to sustain the structures and quality of life that we have. So I personally don't see sewer on the table. Secondary water, absolutely. We are a threat of losing our water rights, And we also need the benefits of secondary water. And if we're talking about being a sustainable town and environmentally sustainable, secondary water is a critical option for us. And so I would bump that up, talk about secondary water. And as for funding, I don't know. I just don't know enough right now to know how that gets implemented. But I find that good money follows good ideas. And that's part of the grant making, and so I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about getting those water rights and then finding the means to protect them and implement a plan that we all benefit from that acreage of water.
I've mentioned secondary water as one of my platform things a number of times. It's something that I have had mulling in my head for quite a while. The town of Bluff does have right now water right, the availability of water rights out of the river, and I would like to discover a way that we can distribute that to the residents of town. With my association with the water board that I have, I do know I get to see numbers that maybe not everybody else gets to see, and that's because we all have an income of privacy. As we live in the United States, we don't publish the amount of water that people always use, but I watch the numbers double in the summertime as opposed to the wintertime usage because we're all watering. And while everybody in Bluff does a really great job, I think, of trying to conserve our water, we are watering. And if we can take advantage of the river rights that we have, then I think that's a great thing. So I would like to explore ways that we can use the secondary water rights that we have established in town, and so everyone can develop that and quit using our aquifer to water our plants, basically. For wastewater, I think it's important to look at the whole thing as a package. One of the goals in the strategic plan is to develop a town of Bluff water system. I think that water system has to look at not only culinary water, I think it has to look at culinary water, I think it has to look at secondary water, and it has to look at wastewater. That's a package. Does it all have to happen immediately? Of course not. You know, I mean, these are big, big projects. And people didn't necessarily think that we would be able to get the funding to implement a water treatment facility that Bluff Water Works is now operating. We got that grant-free. I believe there's money out there. We can go through CIB. We can go through different implementations. In the past, we have been offered grants to put wastewater systems in. We haven't taken advantage of those systems. So I think that there is a way to make these things work. I think we need to discover and work with the partners that we need to do to make that happen. I think that it's a topic that all of us really want to shy away from and not really approach. But one of the problems that Moab has is that I think for a long time they ignored the fact that that was happening and did not approach it. I would like to look at it in a different capacity and not take it off the table and address it when it needs to be addressed. So through CIB funding, through other state funding, I believe that there is a way and a way to get funding for it. And I'm not scared to attack it as an issue.
So for me, for the sewer issue, it's my answer is just not now. Like, I can understand the arguments for having a sewer in the future. Right now, it has a very much a like if we build it, they will come kind of quality to it. Unless the price tag. I mean, whatever people's opinions of wastewater or whatever, the price tags we're talking about are going to get people scared about action on this one, regardless. I mean, whatever we're talking about doing, once you're getting in these $3 and $5 million price tags, that's going to hurt if anything is messed up. So I'm from Alabama originally, and I'm sure things have changed because the last 10 years has been so rough. But at one time, within like the last 10, 15 years, Birmingham, Alabama was one of the biggest, or the biggest municipal bankruptcy in history because of a sewer expansion. It just got out of hand. Like something that seemed simple, they waded into it too early. And people, there are predators out there on projects that large that will come in and take advantage of you. You have to have your head on a swivel and really be ready to invite that kind of project. I don't think we're there yet as a town just to even entertain that just yet. And then I think a lot of the conversation with it, you know, whether it's the sewer or water, BWW, any of that, is that just as somebody newer and on the younger side, I feel like a lot of the conversation has become so toxic over past conversations that I'm not even really quite aware of or what has happened, and it makes being new in town difficult to even engage with the topic because you can't feel like you can ask questions because everybody's mind's made up one way or the other off conversations that happened 10 years ago. So I think with all of this, one of the first things we need to do is work together, try to demystify some of this so that people can have an opinion on it, and you're not like choosing Hatfields and McCoys like right off the bat, like just because you asked a question. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. So anyways, thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I'll ask a question now that came from the chat. So again, thanks to our online participants, our virtual participants. Thanks again for joining us. This question came at 6:27, quite a while ago, from Tina Krutsky. So to all four, what do each of think about the current policy which allows a helicopter pad within 2 miles of the town bridge? After that question, the response, we'll have Bill.
So specifically for the 2 mile from the town bridge, I mean for me, the helicopter conversation, I don't want, my opinion is I just don't want commercial helicopter operations over residential areas. If they're out by the airport, I was more comfortable with that. Personally, I don't want them operating around Bears Ears just because the effect that they have on the landscape. That's more of a personal thing and not something that the town can do anything about. So I agree with keeping helicopters away from residential areas, especially for commercial use, non-emergency use, non-special permitted use. And then, as far as I understand, like I would prefer to use the airport, but that is a Bears Ears National Monument issue with their moratorium they have on commercial permits, and that's hitting not just helicopter operators, that's hitting everybody. Spencer, who got up and talked earlier, he's under that same moratorium for commercial permits. So not in residential areas, I don't think that's controversial. Moab keeps coming up, but that was something even Moab said no to after Sherry Griffith, I believe, was a company that was flying from the south side of town north directly over town. They said no, and that was even them. They were like, no, we won't have that. We'll have 1 million trucks come directly through our downtown every day, but we'll draw the line on that. And so I think that's reasonable, and that's something that, like, if you go Sedona, you just go around. I mean, like, it's an issue that's come up and been pushed down repeatedly over and over and over again. So I'm kind of a little shocked that it's coming up so much. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
You go through a process like this, running for office, you learn a lot about yourself. Mostly from other people. So I learned in this process that I'm in favor of a helipad. I don't know where that came from. I'm agnostic about the helipad. I didn't sign the petition in favor of it. I paid very close attention to the process, and the process, honestly, I found disappointing. I don't think it was collaborative. I think that it was very one-sided, and there wasn't an opportunity to fully hear or explore the options. That's my opinion. I don't, I've read the ordinance, it's in place, fine, planning and zoning put a lot of effort into it, okay, but I don't like the way that the process unfolded, and it follows into my platform of building a sense of community and unity. It doesn't really matter to me what the ultimate result was. The mood of the town, and after thoughtful deliberation, we don't have a helipad, okay. But to alienate neighbors and to create divisiveness over the issue in ways that I don't think were necessary, I think hurts us, not just in the short term, but these issues cycle around in other ways in the future. And we talked about the sewer thing. That's exactly what's happened. It's just been cycling through in different ways and different issues over the decades. So I'd like to, if I have an opportunity on the town council to create a process that feels more inclusive, more collaborative, you may not get what you want, but you won't storm out mad. And I think you won't create a constituency that feels like they have to be contentious in the future. Maybe you prevent lawsuits, whatever. I think that that's essential if we're going to govern ourselves.
I think that there is a place for everything in the community that we are involved in. Do I think that a helicopter pad directly in town is the right place for that? No, not specifically, but I do feel like there is a solution that can be worked around. And I think we also need to look at the benefits that things can bring to us as a community, as well as the possible negative effects that it could have. Having a helicopter pad available in Bluff would help us greatly with emergency services in a lot of areas. It can be used for more than one thing. I grew up in an outfitter business where my company had its main headquarters in town, and we drove 5 miles west of town every single day with our guests and put them on the river. We did not build a boat ramp in our backyard. We probably could have. We lived a half a mile away from the river. We could have easily put a road down there. We didn't. We drove out. We made it work. But we lived in a time, in a sense, when there was a sense of that business was going to benefit Bluff, and it wasn't as such a negative. I don't want to say time, but it wasn't like an immediate no. We're not going to do this. We're not going to allow this to happen. There's a discussion. I agree with Gary that we need to find ways to make things work. Of course, we live in a world of compromise where not everybody is going to get exactly what they want. It's not how the world works. We're not all spoiled two-year-olds who I only want it the way I want it, and that's the way it's going to happen. I feel like we have to come together and work together to find solutions to big problems. I think we have a lot of big problems that approach us, and I hope that we can find a way to make them work, whether that is, finding a way to put a space in at the airport area that has already been developed to allow commercial operations or emergency operations or any other number of operations that could happen out there. That's something to discuss. I would like it to not always, I would like the immediate answer to not be no. I would like to see good time and time and thought and coming at things from all sides in decisions before they're made. And I would really like to see a sense of collaboration so that we can make things work in this town. I don't know.
I would have gone 3 miles when the town brought that up. I spent the last 40 years in aviation management, teaching both aviation safety across the nation, managing large aviation operations, both fixed wing and helicopter, rotary wing. I've had my fair share of accidents. I don't fly in helicopters anymore because my time is up, bottom line. I don't believe that we acted too rationally. Somebody decided they were going to build a helipad and we do it. That's the wrong attitude to have when we're in a town. We need to go ahead and plan for it and do it right. As far as medevac, having one spot out there that's already got a helicopter on it doesn't really help your medevac ship now, does it? Medevacs can land any place they want to, on the highways, in a dust field. They could do that. We don't need a separate helibase. We've got the fire department out here now, and you've used that in the past for this. So, I would just automatically just say no at that, because I live across from where it was suggested that we wanted to build one, and I have lived with helicopters for 40 years. I know what the noise level is. I don't want to hear it. You've seen how many helicopters came over town during the solar eclipse, and the airplanes. How many of you heard them? That's the key for me. I moved down here for the quiet. It's bad enough I've got to listen to gravel trucks going up the hill at 50 miles an hour. So that's my point. I know my neighbors don't like it, but that's the way I feel and believe.
Sorry, and the last thing I want to say about it is like it's such a contentious subject, but like I do feel like there is a country mile between being against commercial aviation and being anti-business. So like there was a concern earlier. It's like business owners get a bad rep. I also feel like residents making a legitimate complaint were also given this. They were also being painted as being unreasonable, and I don't think that was an unreasonable position to be at. So, and I think there's just a huge difference between the two. So, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Bill Crowder, and I live here in Bluff. I want to start off by thanking the four of you for entering the Lion's Den and for, I don't mean just this meeting, but I mean, you've got a pretty good idea about how much work and effort and grief is involved with being a politician in a town, any town or any place. But I want to thank you for doing this. So that was the general part. This is a yes or no to the four of you, and the follow-up is when. Should the Bluff Water Works be brought under the town's control? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, then when?
Well, most of you know I transferred the water rights for the Bluff service area to the town. And that was when the town was incorporated. That was one of the last acts I performed. So I believe that needs to be consolidated into the Bluff Water Works or into a Bluff Water Department, I guess. I would like to see it. 5 years is a long time to be working towards that goal. I think it should happen as soon as possible. I know there's personalities that are involved in that. One of the members running for the town council is being paid by the Bluff Water Works. And so, you know, I would like to make sure that we don't have a conflict of interest future. And I think, as somebody once told me, conflict of interest is only monetary in this regard. So that's we own the water. The Bluff Water Works is a distribution avenue for the water.
Yes, it should be transferred over to the town water department. I mean, yeah, preferably within the next 2-3 years. It would be great if there was like a shadowing kind of like where you had both of them working together to do a positive transition. I don't want to see any situation where information is withheld or not transferred or something like that. Like, I think this all needs to be out in the open and happening pretty quickly. I know that there's been effort on it for years and it hasn't really moved as far as people would like. So yeah, within the next few years, I think there are people in town that that would be interested in working for a water department, a dependable job in town. So I think working on that as soon as possible would be preferred.
I am the paid water board person. I'm just gonna get that on the table. I am not paid to vote. I am not paid to do anything else. I am paid to do secretarial duties. So that's what I'm paid to do for the Bluff Water Works. In doing those secretarial duties, I do attend every meeting that the Bluff Water Works has. In the last 3 years, we've had 2 of our town board members who have started to attend the meetings, and I think that they've learned a lot in attending those meetings and done a lot to improve the groundwork of that transfer. I believe that transfer is in the works. I believe that both boards agree that it needs to happen. We have a current water board that is a volunteer water board made up by, shall we say, more people wanting to retire more. They're not necessarily wanting to continue to operate the water system for the next however long it needs to be run. There is a lot to the water board that I don't think a lot of people in town understand. It's a process. And it's a process that is is ongoing, and I think is being worked on. Could it work faster? I think, yeah, it could work faster, but we live in a town of volunteers that a lot of the volunteers in this town have full-time jobs, and is it the top burning issue of everybody? I don't know, probably not. I hear of people saying that they want to contribute and work with the water board. I don't ever see very much community activity at the water board meetings. I don't see a lot of people reaching out to find out where the water lines are. I don't see a lot of people volunteering to step up when it goes to repair a water line. It's more than issuing bills and collecting money. It's knowing where these things are physically, and that, we lost Melvin last year, 2 years ago. Melvin has been an active member of the water board for his whole entire life, and if you don't think that we used the information that was in his brain until the day he died, you have another, there's something else that needs to be thought of. So we need to see community step up and participate in that process. And yes, it is a process, and I believe that it will happen. I can't put a time frame on it. I would like to see it happen sooner rather than later because, quite frankly, I'm tired of writing about it every month in my minutes. So I would like to see it move off the slate. But I think we have made tremendous progress in the last 2 years in getting that transaction to actually happen. There's a lot of contention in that. And I also think it needs to happen as a full department system, not just a distribution. I want it to be a true water department that looks at all aspects of water in Bluff when we do make the transition between the Bluff Water Works to the Town of Bluff Water Department.
I also have been attending the water board meetings for the last several months since I announced my candidacy. And I became intimately involved in the processes when I was working on the water reconciliation and interlocal agreement for 2 years, 2014 to 16. So I do have a pretty good idea of what's involved in running the water, culinary water in town. And that's why my attitude about this has shifted. The answer to your question, Bill, right now for me is no. I do not believe that the water board should at this time come under the umbrella of the town because the culinary water is arguably our most critical infrastructure in town. Our lives depend on it, and it runs flawlessly. Yet every time it comes up in the town council, the water board is villainized and attacked in some way. And I don't think that we should bring that kind of politics into our water distribution system. At the time in which we can respect how that water system has gone, it's a sustainable system that's exemplary throughout the region. It is built up from the water board's efficient and effective use, understanding of policies, laws, construction, radio technology, and more than anything else, relationships. Relationships with the county and with the state, at least. So I don't want to mess with that because it's working beautifully. Their meetings are efficient, as was mentioned. They get the work done. We turn on our faucets. We get safe water. They're looking out for us in ways you don't even know. You go to the meetings, you hear about the sampling they're doing to make sure that the metals in our pipes aren't getting into our water. They're ahead of the state on this, which is having a requirement that we do that, and they're trying to protect us so that if the state were to come down, homeowners wouldn't be stuck with huge bills replacing their pipes. There's things like that that are happening all the time. And I've seen how town politics go. I know it can be rough. I don't want to risk our water system to that process until we can govern ourselves in a way that is respectful of the water board, what they do as volunteers, and engage in the difficult conversations in constructive ways.
Thank you. Second question, and this is more a general question. I've been hearing tonight from some of you about that we need to come together, that we need to build a sense of community and unity. And what I am not hearing is this. I mean, that's fine and good. Everybody believes in that. But what I'm not hearing is the specifics about how that would be done, particularly when one of you, I forget who, said that there's really no competing interest between business and environment, or business and the town members, what have you. But I'd like to hear your thoughts on specifically how that would be done, okay, to the four of you. Well, let me add, if you think that can't be done, just say so, and we can just, cut through that.
So specifically, I mean, one of the things that's always, I find hard to take living out here is when we start infighting with one another. It's wild to me because we live in the middle of nowhere and nobody cares about us other than like maybe how they can step in and extract something out of us, for a little bit. But nobody really cares about our lives at all. So when we start like bickering at one another, nobody else is out here for us. Blanding doesn't care about Bluff. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we are our own little town, and that's it. So the infighting's never really made sense to me. I think stop gossiping. I think if you have, like everybody, this goes for people in official capacities and non-official capacities. If you heard a rumor about what somebody's going to do about blah, 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 go talk to them directly. Don't just run off with a rumor and live in that reality from then on. I think it takes practice. I mean, just the same way that it takes personal practice to interact with everybody on a day-to-day basis. We're just going to have to have more people appeal to their higher self in the moment, it's while there are a lot of obviously important things on the line. We're just all still neighbors. We're going to have to deal with it. I've said for years, San Juan County, it doesn't have enough bridges to burn. So I don't really understand what the end goal is unless people wanted to move out here to get the same kind of problems they would have in a big city, where you disagreements with your neighbors and all that stuff. So part of it's positivity, just pointing positive, like saying on river trips, don't point at the negative stuff, don't focus on the negative stuff, don't focus on the things we're disagreeing with, focus on the bad. I know it's cliche and trope at this point, but the vast majority of things we do agree on. And then I think, like, to kind of follow Melissa Eggy's lead on being positive and open and honest with each other. If you just be honest in who you are, and hopefully it works out. God, kumbaya. How are y'all feeling?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, I have no idea. Some of the stuff about having community meetings, potlucks, is probably something that I would continue to suggest. The reason I quit the BSA was because no good deed goes unpunished in this town, no matter what you do. You can try to help somebody out and they're going to get upset with you for however it goes. I found out this morning, I don't know how many of you know Dudley Beck, but he's in the hospital in ICU up in Salt Lake City with a brain tumor. And so Dudley's going in for an operation tomorrow. So we need to take care of each other all the time. And that's it. When my neighbors are gone, I take care of their house. I'm taking care of Ann Babbitt's house. Well, what is it now? The Ritter's house. Trying to get that squared around while they're gone and haven't been around. Neighbors helping neighbors is the only way it's going to happen. And, living on the west side, I don't have too many neighbors now. Still have a whole bunch of them moved in. They didn't ask me if they could, but they did. So anyway, I don't know. It's really hard with the rumors that fly around here as quickly as they possibly do. I'm sorry.
I think that we need to take the time as public officials to listen to all sides of a story. I know that the town council puts a lot of time and effort into doing that already. I also think that when you're making the time to listen to what people are saying, you really need to listen to what people are saying and not go into something with your mind already made up. You know, I really think it's important to listen and consider all sides of the story. I think that we live in a contentious time. I've already touched on this a little bit, where everybody really wants to get only what they want done. I think we've lost the art of compromise in our society, and I would like to get back to that, because I don't think we're ever going to get everything that we want. We just try to make it the best that it is. I, as a business owner, have felt attacked for a lot of years about being a business owner in this community, forgetting the fact that I've lived here since I was 11 years old, and I am a resident of this community, and I deeply care about what happens in this community. One of my good friends has told me that I have to quit taking everything that's said to me so personally, and that's something that I'm working on. You know, I mean, it's not necessarily a personal attack, but I think that there are a lot of us who have gotten to the point in our community where we feel like a lot of things are a personal attack, and that doesn't matter what we say, somebody's already going to have the opinion on what it is that we're going to do about this and not take the time to listen. I think we have a lot of established laws and rules in the community that we need to fall back on and enforce. I think that there's a lot of federal and state laws and things like that. I think that we, as a board, need to let go and rely on other resources to do things sometimes, and not quite think that we need to be in total control of everything that happens and let things work themselves out, because I think often they will, but that takes a lot of time, and time is the key there of taking the time to listen and taking the time to make sure that all sides feel represented, heard, and understood, and then fair decisions will be made. And I actually want to applaud the town of Bluff for taking the time to listen to the aviation rule and, you know, go through things, and I think hash them out and try to come up with a solution. So thank you for taking that time to do, because I know you did all put a lot of time and effort into that, and I think that needs to be recognized. And I also think that we need to stop thinking that we need to get everything on our sheet checked off in order for it to be a success, because compromise is the name of the game for me, and that's not always getting everything that we want.
Good question. Let me first address something you said at the introduction of this one. Spencer had said that how do we get it so the businesses don't take over town needs? And what I said was that the two were consonant. The two businesses enable us to attend to town needs. Now, that's not to say that there's not points of tension and that the contention isn't going to come up, and I did address that as well. But I also wanted to just correct that I didn't say that the two are always compatible, but fundamentally they live together. So 3 concrete approaches that I've been thinking about to answer this very question. One is when we're in town council meetings and someone comes up with a complaint about a helicopter pad or about some issue they have, whatever it is, with a neighbor, the first thing that I'd like to think more carefully about is what's the town's jurisdiction here? To what extent does our charge address this issue, and in what angle does this issue come to us that is consonant with the laws and policies of running the town? So I want to get clear about that first, so that this doesn't become a court of public opinion that takes mountains of time just to sift through, to assuage feelings perhaps, but that may not be immediately obvious what it is that we as a town council are supposed to do that falls within our jurisdiction. So that's one thing. The second thing is when these things come up, I would like to ask, when they come up at a town council meeting, have you talked with your neighbor about this? If you haven't, come back after you have, preferably with your neighbor, and let us know what progress you've made on this before we charge off in one or another direction. This would first of all get people face to face earlier, and also it might tone down the rhetoric, and also selfishly it would also reduce the amount of time that the town council has to spend on this stuff. Third is an idea that I've been fooling with that I'm not sure how it would happen, but I would like to consider forming some sort of an entity that can function outside of the town council. Things that happen through the town council have to necessarily be public. They often have to be recorded. So I would like to think of find a way to create a face-to-face protected space where these issues could be discussed and briefed before they come to the town council, or perhaps during if it's a more protracted process. But anyway, I think that one of the reasons that the voices can be stifled sometimes and this discussion can be truncated is because in the public space of the town council, there's strict rules for how everything is recorded. And the interactions are often supposed to be just focused on the members of the town council. So if we could find a process or an entity that we could create where these kinds of discussions could flow more freely, I think it would help ensure that all the voices are together in a single place and create more of a possibility of compromise and reconciliation.
Awesome, thanks everyone. I think this will be the last question coming from the chat online. Again, thanks to our virtual participants. Thanks for joining us. And those here in the room, thanks also for joining us. Last question here tonight, unless someone's gonna object me, please do so. From Dan Myers at 6:34 p.m. What are your top priorities from the strategic plan, or just the top 2 to 3 services you think the town should implement?
Well, I agree that we need maintenance on some of that. We have stormwater drainages that need to be cleaned, so we need to take a look at that type of activity so that we've got somebody to sit down and do the fix the faucet that's in the bathroom or wherever. And that's only going to get more and more required as we take over the community center or the cultural community center. I think the other thing that we need to do is try to figure out a way to deal with enforcement of the codes that we have on the line. And then the third thing is, I still think speeding traffic through town is a drag. We need to stop it, but, that's not going to happen. So those are, maintenance to me is preventive maintenance as far as that goes. You stop something from breaking and then it costs less to fix. Code enforcement is another big one that I have. And then I guess the third would be Bluff Waterworks and trying to figure out a way that we can work with those folks to absorb that into the town. We also have, everybody talks about waste management as being something with a sewer. We have an individual in town that's collecting garbage now and doing all of that. So you've got garbage and water. If you take a look at Blanding, Monticello, it's all wrapped up into one thing. So I could see that as being that.
So for me, I think focus would be on the CCC. I've heard this thing called 8 different things now. So I call it the Cooperative Cultural Center. That was the last name I'd heard. Okay, I heard cross-cultural the other day, and I was like, oh my God, I got typos everywhere. I would focus on the CCC, on getting that building useful. Like right now, we've got the food bank working out of there, the Bluff Community Foundation is doing recycling out of there, Forest Service and DNR are really interested in using the space for a wood bank to give biomass removal projects to some of our native neighbors that need help with wood collection. So that's like three really awesome goals that are being used in the building, and it's just a parking lot. Like that's all. That's how much use we're getting out of the building with just having a parking area. So imagine how much we could do if that gets handled. So I think that one's really important, and we're on the line for that already. The other stuff is like potentially we could be on the line for. We're already on the line for the CCC. So I think that's crucial. I would really like to see us follow through, finish up with all the dark sky implementation. That's is super far along, but it's still a big lift. I'd love to see that go further. And then I would love to see, to kind of go with the speeding thing, I would like to see some sort of infrastructure, a sidewalk or something on 191, or at least light, I don't know, like something to where I'm not driving through after work and almost just completely nail tourists who are just wandering around trying to get to a restaurant. That kind of thing. The pedestrian traffic through town would be a huge one for me.
Top of my list is also the CCC. I agree with what, even though I said I hate this part, but I agree that that needs to be the top of our agenda, because we do have that property in our name. It isn't, right now it is not an asset, I don't believe. But I have a strong belief that it can be a great town asset as soon as we can get into it and actually utilize it. Secondly, I would like to strongly work on improving perceived and non-perceived relationships with the business owners of Bluff. I would also like to work on developing other relationships that help us out community-wide, strengthen those relationships. I think that by taking some burden and sharing some loads, that we can continue to develop great relationships with our other entities in the area to help us be successful. And third, I would like to focus on just services available for the community, like maintenance and type things like that. Not taking advantage, that's the wrong word. Finding the resources with the people in the community who have things, or acquiring have the equipment to do the maintenance that we need, I guess is where I'm going, whether we need to hire that out to someone or purchase it ourselves. I don't think the town needs to purchase a bunch of tractors and things right now, because that's kind of a maintenance nightmare. But, developing the relationships with people who do have those things already, and, just kind of taking care of our town and keeping it maintained. We've got a lot of beautiful spaces. And I think a big part of that is working on the active transportation plan. I'm so happy to hear the success that's happening with that so far. I've got my fingers and toes and every other body member that I can cross to see that active transportation plan go through and get a walkable trail from the west side to the east side of Bluff. I think that will be beneficial to tourists, residents, everyone involved. So really kind of push and support those kind of programs. Those are my top three, I think.
One of the things I'd like to do early on is operationalize this building unity and community agenda that Bill raised, how to integrate that value into our town governance. I'm just, I've been involved in the fire department for a long time, and on the strategic plan, community health and safety is one of the action areas. I'm very interested and concerned in creating a sustainable fire department that keeps pace and actually is a little ahead of the curve on town growth. And that's something that I have, some jurisdiction for within the fire department. So that would be a strategic area that I would want to pursue. The active transportation has gained great momentum because of that committee and its leadership, and I think we just support that through and make that happen, as Britt had mentioned. The CCC is got to be dealt with. It's a difficult issue. It's a great opportunity, but it's also a burden, and we need to start turning that around. There's other things that have been talked about here. Those are, top of mind for me. The more long-term, again, the task force for long-term or affordable housing is important, and solving our water issues. I would also add code enforcement, as I agree with Wes on that. And I would like to clean up and find a solution for access to the Bluff River Trail on the west side.
Thank you, beautiful people. Thanks for offering your thoughts here. Thanks for asking your questions, those of you here and online. Again, thanks for joining us. Also, again, shout out to Craig, and shout out to all the people who made it possible to be in this space. So, woo, big celebration. Thanks again. Kind reminder, if you can pack up your chairs onto the racks, it'd be great. If you want to help take down a table or two, also great. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great evening. Chat with you.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Okay.
Thank you, Melissa.
Leave the tables up. Thanks so much.